All right, let me start the recording
Brilliant.
and we'll go from there. Okay, we are on, I
Amazing.
think, lesson 10. Number 10 and lesson 2 for my friend Kristine. She did amazing on the previous lesson. If you haven't seen it, it's on YouTube. You can go check it out. Lots of cool stuff. I cracked a joke last week. Christine put some homework on, and I said, if you didn't complete your homework, don't show up. I was joking, okay? I'm not a mean professor. We want everybody to be here. Yeah, you won't be shamed if you haven't done homework. It's okay. We are way past elementary, so always come back. Don't mind me. It's sorry about my bad jokes. Okay, my kids tell me to stop every time. I have the dad jokes. Anyhow, Christine, thanks so much for being here again. Thanks for doing lesson 2 with us. This is lesson 2 of the Extreme Power Apps Extreme Makeover. So we're excited to hear and see what you have to show. Take it away.
Yes, thank you so much, Victor. Thank you. And hi everyone again. Long time no see. I feel like I haven't seen you for ages. Amazing to be here again. And thank you so much, Victor, for having me on the show. I absolutely love From Zero to Hero. So I think for the first part, before we kind of dive into the learning, I would absolutely love to see the outcome of everyone's homework. Um, how would you like to do this? Is anyone happy to share their screen and maybe show us as an example, or would you prefer to do screenshots? What would you like to do? If anyone wants to take the stage, you're more than welcome to take the stage. I would love to see what everyone has done. My dog ate my homework. I love that, Leo. That's okay. That's okay. As a dog owner, I can relate to that. Yes. No worries, Roxanne. That's absolutely fine. No problem at all. I'll go over the homework later on again at the end of the session, so you'll still have time to catch up on it. My dog too. Okay, well, it looks like everyone's dogs have eaten their homework. Is there anyone that has their homework to share? Oops, Jess, I can see you moving your lips, but I can't actually hear you for some reason.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me
yes,
now?
all
Hey.
good. Yeah.
So I have a screenshot. Usually what I do is like draft up something on Figma and
Mhm.
then I go onto the
Amazing.
canvas. I
Brilliant.
didn't have time to go onto the canvas, but I've got my Figma screenshot if you want to see it.
Amazing. Yes, let's see it.
Yeah,
Let's show
lovely.
off.
Um, how do I share it on here? Let's have a look. 2 seconds.
No worries. Take your time. Take your time. Pranav, I've just seen your message as well. That's absolutely fine. School takes priority. 100% always. Don't worry at all.
You might want to come back to me because my
Yeah,
computer's going
okay.
super
Yeah,
slow.
no, absolutely fine. Just no worries
Two
at all. We can
seconds.
we can cover that at the end, then not a problem at all. Right. So what we will do then is we will start with the session itself and then we'll continue doing what we started on Tuesday. So I will just quickly share my screen, and if you wouldn't mind just letting me know when you can see the presentation, that would be awesome. Let me just pop that window and then I'll share the presentation. And if you can just let me know when you can see that, that would be perfect. And I am just going to move your faces on the screen so I can actually see somebody. Teams. There we go. Okay. Right. Can everyone see the screen? Perfect. Brilliant
Yes.
stuff. Right. So for today's session, we are going to dive into slightly more complex things. But when I say complex, I try to make them as little complex, if that's an English phrase, as possibly possible, possibly possible. And that's because there's a lot of stigma around HTML and CSS and the other topic that we'll cover today. And actually, when we look at Power Apps and in the context of Power Apps, It's actually really simple. So we'll start by covering the basics of what these actually are, and then I'll show you in real life how to work with them in the actual application. So first of all, let's start with HTML. So HTML stands for hyperlink markup language, hypertext, sorry, markup language. And the easiest way to think about HTML, besides the description that you can see on the screen, is that's what the whole web is working on. So there isn't a website right now out there that would be able to run without some sort of HTML running on there. And that's probably the easiest way to explain it beyond the dictionary. And then the second part that you will often see, and we'll go over that in a second, that goes alongside HTML is CSS. Now, if we look at HTML in general, they have a relatively straightforward structure. So I am just going to quickly turn on the pointer because I've forgotten to do that, just so you can see my mouse. There we go. So the structure of HTML is relatively simple. So in traditional development, we will have the name of the element. So we have multiple, we have just over 130 HTML elements in HTML5 that we can use. And the most common one that you'll probably see the most is div. A div element is effectively like a container, so you can put anything within there. But again, it's not really as relevant to us today because we'll keep it very high level. Then after that, you will usually have an attribute of some sort. So we can give it an class as an example. We can give it an identifier like an ID, something that we will then be able to target using CSS. And we'll go over that in a second. And then after that, you will see that we are closing the opening element, opening tag in here, and then we're adding a closing tag at the very end. We have the / and then div. Now, some HTML elements you might see are self-closing, which means that they don't actually require to have a closing element at the end. An example of that would be, let's say, an image HTML element. Now, when we look at HTML generally in Power Apps, we don't even have to have the class or an ID. And the reason why is because we can't actually target that with CSS. Now, before we go over that, and I'll show you that hands-on, let's have a look what CSS actually is. Now, CSS, again, just stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And the easiest way to think about CSS beyond the description that you can see from the dictionary or you can see on there is we use CSS to style our HTML. Now, there's multiple people describing, every developer will tell it differently. Some people describe HTML as the skeleton of your body, CSS as your kind of skin on the outside, and then JavaScript is what's moving your body around. Now, again, it's quite a graphical explanation, I guess. The easiest way to just think about it, CSS is what makes your HTML pretty. Without CSS, we just have very plain elements in there. Now, when it comes to CSS in general, when we use traditional CSS, we have a very straightforward structure. So we have, as you can see, we are using a class of some sort, so something that we will use to target the HTML element. So in this instance, we are using a class. We could use an ID, which would mean that we're using hashtag and then the name, or we could target every single HTML element. So if we wanted to put just div without any stop here, full stop, or any hashtag, that will target every single HTML element in your code. Now, the whole thing we called a rule set. So everything that you can see within here is called a rule set. Now, when it comes to Power Apps specifically, we don't have the ability to be able to target or add style sheets. These are normally contained within a separate file within your website or an application or whatever it is that you're building. So the way we have to work with HTML in Power Apps is by using what we call inline styling. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move back to my application. So I'm just going to close the presentation and we'll go and have a look at how that works hands-on. So I'm just going to stop sharing for 1 second and let me just do that. And we will start sharing the actual application. And if we just go to window and then go back to, oops, sharing the presentation again, I will just close that off. Let me just give that a second. There we go. And if we open the window again, and there's our application here. Okay, if you could just let me know when you can see my screen with the application, that would be perfect. Can everyone see that? Perfect. Thanks, Jess. Thank you so much. Right, so if we were to just go to our application that we did in here, and actually I'll just open a brand new screen. So we'll open a blank screen and I'll give it a moment. Okay, and within Power Apps, we have the ability to be able to add what's called a HTML text control. Now, HTML by default, we have the ability to be able to create interactive elements. However, one thing that you have to note is that we can't actually do that within Power Apps. Well, we can, but there's no way to pass information or actions from the HTML control. So if you were to add, let's say, a text input using the HTML control, you won't be able to get the information out of that. So HTML text control should only be used for decorative purposes, and I'll show you how that looks right now. So let's imagine that we adding a very simple div element in here, just like I showed you in the example. So we will have div, and then we'll just give it a class of, I don't know, hero as an example. And then we'll close that off, and then we'll close the div element here. Now, by default, as you can see, did I click off that, or did I just delete that? There we go. By default, as you can see, there's no content in there, and that's because we haven't applied any styling. Now, like I said before, we don't necessarily need to have any names or attributes in here, so we can actually take this out because we can just have a very simple plain div element in here. Now, to add styling, we have to use what's called inline styling. So if you ever want to Google, let's say, how to apply something, as an example, using HTML, always add inline styling, because if you just type in how to do something using CSS, it will give you a proper rule set. So to define inline styling, we literally just have to write style and then single quotes, and all of our styling goes between here. Now, let's just assume that we want to create a rectangle that's 100 pixels by 200 pixels, and it has a background of, let's say, I don't know, blue as an example. The way we do it is we will just declare height, oops, can't type, height as of, let's say, 100 pixels, width as of, let's say, 200 pixels, and then we will give background, and my computer says frozen. There we go, background of blue. And in a second, you should see that rectangle pop up in here. Now, if you want to make this more readable, I always suggest that you do this the way we do it traditionally in CSS. So you list them in separate lines just so you can see exactly what you have in there as well. And if you were to pop this into Visual Studio Code as an example, you will have nice color coding in there as well. But for the kind of purpose of today, we'll keep it like that. So if you want to, you can start adding more things. So let's just assume we want to change the color of that to be a nice gradient as an example. To do this, we can use that defining the background again, and I already have a website open on here that allows me to grab pre-generated gradients, so I don't have to worry about writing that from scratch. And what we can do from here is I'll just pick, let's say, this one. I think this looks quite cool. I'll click on copy to CSS, and if I was just go into here, and I'll take this out, I'll do Control and V to paste it. And in a second, as you can see, we now have that gradient in the application. And before I forget, I'm just going to quickly pop the link to this website in the chat as well, because my memory is terrible, which is why Alexa is sitting right behind me. When I say Alexa, I mean like the Amazon Alexa, not actual person. And if you want to get gradients from there, you certainly can. So that's one way to add gradients to here. Now, let's just assume that we want to add some border radius as an example. Let me just make this slightly smaller, border radius. So let's just say we want to add border radius and make it slightly more soft around the edges. We will just type in, let me just zoom out of this a little bit. There we go. I will type in border radius, and we will just say, as an example, 25 pixels, and by default that will make it a lot softer around the edges. Now let's add some box shadow as an example. So I'm going to go to another website, and we'll just say box shadows 93. It's a website that has 93 pre-generated shadows. So if you're not confident, again, you can just copy and paste them from here. I will just copy that and paste the link into the chat again. There you go. And in here, as you can see, we have loads of nice box shadows. So I'm just going to choose one. Let's just say this one. I really like this one because it has like inside inset box shadow in here. I'm going to navigate back to my application, and after the semicolon, I'm just going to do Control and V, and just like that, we have box shadow in here. Now, you might not necessarily see it properly on the screen there, just because Teams will probably wash it out a little bit. So I am just going to quickly go to here and just copy, let's say, this one as an example instead. And I'll just remove that and do Control and V. And this is even lighter. So I'm just going to increase this to, let's say, 0.45 perhaps. Hopefully that translates well on there. Now, the next thing that you can see as an example is that we have this cutoff line in here. The box shadow is getting cut off. So what we can do is we can just move it off the side. So we get to do that. We have multiple ways to do this. And the quickest way probably will be just to apply margin. So I'll apply margin to all of our corners. And I'll just say this will be, let's just hard code a value of 25 pixels as an example. Actually, we'll make it 50 pixels as an example. And I will just make this slightly bigger. And as you can see, we now have this control in here. Now, personally, I do prefer when the box shadow itself isn't gray. I think gray kind of washes out the application. So what I tend to suggest is that you use an actual color that you have on here as well and just make it slightly more opaque. So for this example, let's just say I want to use one of these colors. I'm just going to go into here. And because if I was to pass the hex value into here, it will get the full opacity. Oops, forgot the hashtag. Full opacity, and it's kind of a little bit too intense. And I don't really want the blue color either, to be fair. I'll copy one of the other values. What I am going to do is I'm going to pass a hex value to a converter and get an RGBA value, so then we can make it semi-transparent. So I'm just going to do hex to RGBA. And again, don't worry if this is like, wow, too much information already. And it's like 10 minutes into the session, because it can be quite overwhelming at first. So hopefully when you're watching this back and you're playing around, so you can stop and then obviously play and apply this yourself, it will make a lot more sense as well. So I'm just going to paste this color into here, and it's this pink color from here. Actually, I want to get the orange color instead. Get that. Go into my hex RGBA. Get that, and then we'll copy the RGB value, and we are going to make that semi-transparent. So I'll just make it in here, and we'll just go into here, Control and V, and I'll just make this, let's say, as an example, 0.3 or 0.5. And the idea is that you want to make this very soft. You don't want this to be great, but you don't want this to be colorful, too colorful, as an example, because it creates that kind of distortion between everything that you have in here. Now, to take it even further, we can add another color. So I can take this color as an example, Control and C, which is the blue color, go back into here, get that into here, and then we'll copy that across, go into my application again, paste that, oops, paste that into here. There we go. And then I'll just set the opacity as an example to 0.3. And I think that specific box shadow is quite set to the corner here. So I'm just going to extend that, and let's just say we'll move that off the edges a little bit, and then we'll blur that out by, as an example. And now we have kind of two-tone. I think that's a little bit too intense personally. We'll just keep it quite close to the edge there. And this is just a quick way of how to do that. So when it comes to HTML now, what you can do next is you can try and build a control using HTML. So let's just assume that we want to build a button, and this is going to be your homework as well. So to build a button, all I have to do now is I have to layer one of the out-of-the-box buttons on top, and then we are pretty much ready. So I'm just going to add a button, and I'll go for button, and then we'll go into here. Go into here, and the first thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to layer that on top here. So we'll need to make sure that the measurements are exact, which is, I think, 100 by 200. Yep, so we will make that 100, 100, that was 200, and then 100. Okay, layer that on top of here, and then we'll change the border radius to 25. I think that's what we did. I'm pretty sure. There we go. And then the last couple of touches, we will make this transparent. So I'll make that completely transparent. Oops, standard and then transparent. I will say, click me. As an example. Okay, we will change the fonts to, let's say, Lato Light as an example, maybe, and we'll change the fonts to be slightly smaller. We'll just say 18. Okay, and the last thing that we need to do is just change the hover fill. So we will go to hover fill, and then we'll just make this, let's say, RGBA 96, 96, 96, 0.2. and then we'll do Control C. Then for pressed fill, we'll do something similar. There we go, Control V, and then I'll just increase the opacity. Oops. There we go. And then for pressed color as well, I'll just take that out. Okay, so now if I was just hover over the button, actually that's a little bit too small. I'll just quickly zoom in here. If I was just hover over the button, as you can see, we now have a fully functioning button. Again, I need to fix the black color in here, but that's a quick way to build a HTML button. Now, obviously you don't necessarily want to be doing that every single time you use a HTML control. You want to be able to reuse things. So to do that, we can easily just Control and C this, navigate to our components pane in here, and then we can add a brand new component. I can pop that into here. And again, we would obviously need to change the sizing and obviously add that property, but this means that I can easily just go into here, go into component and go to custom, get our component. And now we have this reusable component in here. We can make it fully responsive too. So if you wanted to make the HTML text fully responsive, we could, let's say, go into here, pop over here, and then we can just say that this should be the parent width. Now, the one gotcha that you have in here is that you have to use double quotes and the ampersand sign, and then put parent dot height, and then close that off. And then you need to add px at the end to symbolize pixel. Then we'll do the same for the width, and that will be parent dot width. There we go, and then close that off, and then pixel again. Now, the only problem that we'll have with that now is, as you can see, because we have margins, we will have to fix that and let's say deduct, as an example, height minus, let's say 15 as an example, and then minus 50 there as well. I think, actually, let's just link this to the component itself. Component 2 dot height. Perfect. And then component, oops, can type component, there we go. Component 2 dot width, there we go. And that's component, perfect. Okay, if I was just going to here, hopefully that should now, oops, there we go. Okay, for some reason I have broken this, and let me just go into here, size, we'll make this parent dot, let me just go into here, size, there we go, parent dot width. Okay, and then this should be parent dot height. Oops, there we go, height. Okay, and then one last thing that I think we're missing in here, it's because of the margins. So I'll just make this, let's say 150, 150. There we go. So now again, we don't have to worry about the kind of uneven edges there. It's just an example, but you can see now that if I would just quickly do this, you can see that this is fully scalable. So if you wanted to use it as a header, as a button or whatever, you now have a fully scalable HTML control, and you don't have to redo that every single time. You could take it even further and you can add some properties. So if you wanted to customize this and be able to let your end users, let's say, add or change colors on the fly, I can just assign 2 properties. So I can add a new custom property, and I can just say this will be my hex value, hex color 1 as an example. Or actually, we don't even have to do that. We can just say gradient or color as an example, color. And we'll just do that. And what we can do now is, by default, I will just set that to be the color that we had in here. So I'll just pop the color in here, and then we'll do Control and C. Oops. There we go, Control and C. Go back to my component, and I'll just pop that into here so we don't lose that. Control and C. And then I'll go back to my components here, and I will just quickly replace this value and just say, we will say component 2. So we'll link the value of this to our component, and we'll say color. And what this effectively means is that right now, if I was just going to the component here, so we still have this component that we inserted here, and you can see we have the color there. If I was to just go back to one of our gradients that we had in here and copy this one as an example, go back into here and paste that into here, as you can see, we now have that control. So now we have a control that we have made on the fly, and for some reason we've lost the border radius, which I assume is because we've missed a semicolon somewhere. Border radius, yes, for some reason I have broken the border radius. I have no idea where that's broken. I can't see it right now. I'll be able to see that when I'm looking at this back. But it's really as easy as that to be able to do things like that and have reusable components. So you don't necessarily have to do this from scratch every single time. Okay. Any questions at all so far before we navigate to SVGs, which is an even worse topic? Sorry. Any questions at all? Okay, perfect. Right, so moving on to my presentation. So I'll quickly stop sharing and I'll start sharing the presentation again. And apologies if you can hear my dog in the background. Someone just closed the door outside and he's just gone off on a little barking fit, shall I call it? So if you can hear him, please ignore him. He's had surgery today as well. So yeah, he's a little poor baby today. So moving on to the next topic, and I'll just quickly whiz over that. The next thing that we can use in Power Apps to further enhance the look and feel is SVGs. Now, SVGs, the easiest way to explain them or the definition from the dictionary is scalable vector graphics. Now, I know what you might be thinking, you know, Kristine, what does that mean? What are you even talking about? Now, the easiest way to think of an SVG is if you've ever used Excel as an example. Let's just assume that you opened an Excel tab and you colored specific cells within the Excel sheet to make it a shape of some form. So let's just say you wanted to build, I don't know, a flag of a country as an example. What you're doing there is exactly how SVGs are built. So SVGs are built using what's called XML. And the easiest way, like I said, to think about them is just little cells that make up the entire SVG. Now, the beauty of using SVGs compared to images, standard images, is that SVGs are scalable. So it doesn't matter how small or large you make them, the quality stays the same. So you don't lose the quality of your SVG. And the second thing is that the SVGs are very low in size. So if you use icons that are SVGs, they will usually be like 1 kilobyte as an example. Now, if you've ever used an icon website for getting icons, let's say flat icon, if you've ever heard of that, if you download an icon, even if it's 64 pixels by 64 pixels, chances are it will be around 20, 30 kilobytes. And obviously, as you start adding them to your application now will become this monster that's like 20 megabytes. It takes 5 years to open the app. So SVGs definitely have a lot of benefits. Now, another thing that you can use SVGs for is to create animation, and SVGs are the only way to infuse animation without having to use the timer controller in Power Apps. That makes it, you know, takes it to another level, and I'll show you that in a second as well. Now, when it comes to SVG in Power Apps, to add an SVG into your Power App, you have to follow a specific format, and that is the format you can see on here. Now, the easiest way to explain it is because we are passing the SVG to our Power Apps as an image, we have to convert it on the fly to an actual base 64 image. So what we're doing here is we're effectively just using, and let me just get the pointer. So we're declaring the format of what we're actually passing through the formula and the char set, and then we're using the encode URL function to be able to pass and convert the special characters into plain characters for application to be able to read them. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Kristine, you're blagging. I have no idea what you're talking about, so I'll show you what that looks like right now, hands on. So let me just close this off again, and I will just start sharing the other screen yet again, and we will flick that across and window, and then here we are. Now, before we do anything, let's have a look at how to add an SVG to your website. So my favorite website for SVGs, and that primarily for icons that I need to use for, let's say, navigation menus or any kind of text input and all of that, is Bootstrap icons. Now, Bootstrap is just a CSS framework, like, well, it's a library for JavaScript and CSS that we can use to build websites very quickly. It's also what Power Pages are built on. But for today, all we need is just the Bootstrap icons. So if we're just going to here, as you can see, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of icons that look way better than the icons that we get in Power Apps. And I probably shouldn't say that because as an MVP, I probably should say, you know, I love all of the icons that we have in Power Apps. But yes, the icon sets that we get in Power Apps is quite limited at the moment. So bootstrap icons are the quickest way to extend that icon set. Now, let's just assume that we want to get one of these icons, and I'm just going to choose, let's say, this heart balloon. Actually, it's one of my favorite icons to use of all time. I'm just going to click on that. And as you can see, it's giving me lots of options. So I can download this to be an SVG file. And to be fair, we don't need to do that because it will just clog your downloads file folder. We don't need to do that. Then you have the icon font. This is only useful for when you're building a traditional website, so you can put that into your HTML code. And then we have the actual SVG in here. So before we copy that and paste that to application, there's a couple of things that we need to do. First of all, we need to write that really long formula. Now, don't worry about remembering this formula because it took me ages and ages to remember exactly character by character how to write it. So don't be afraid of just copying and pasting. Now, to add the SVG to our application, we first of all have to add an image control. So I'm just going to pop in image. There we go. And then we need to write this really long formula in here. So again, I know this off the top of my heart because I type it in pretty much every single day. And chances are, because I'm being recorded right now, that I will probably misspell it at some point, but it's all right. And then we'll do comma and then encode URL. Okay, and then double quotes in here. And our SVG code goes effectively here. So as you can see right now, that image is blank. There's nothing in here. All of the SVG codes goes in here. So this never changes. This is always the same. The only thing that will ever change is the SVG code within here. So I am just going to move this a couple of lines down just to make it a bit more clear. And we'll go back to our balloon heart and I'll click on the clipboard in here. Copy. And then first of all, before we can move that to application, we have to replace double quotes with single quotes. Now, by default, as you can see, all of them have double quotes. And unfortunately, if you do that and add that to Power Apps, it will just give you an error because it can't render that. So you have to convert that to single quotes. Now, normally I'd do that in Visual Studio Code or Notepad, but because I'm just sharing the internet browser, I have already opened an online website that allows me to just replace text. So I'm just going to pop that into here. And then I'll go to find text. So we'll find all of the double quotes and replace that with single quotes. And this is producing the result at the very bottom here. So I'm just going to do Control and A and Control and C to copy this, go into here and paste it into here. And if all went well, as you can see, we now have this icon in the application. Now, before we carry on with anything else, let's have a look at the actual structure of an SVG. So SVGs, again, when you look at an SVG for the first time, you just have like a set of numbers that make absolutely no sense. And these numbers, all they're doing is just defining the curves around the SVG to create a shape that we want. Again, no one is ever going to expect you to write that from scratch. And personally, if you ask me to tell you what these numbers stand for, I wouldn't be able to. And I don't think there's any person out there that would be able to tell you because most developers or most designers that create icons like that will use an application like Adobe or will use SVG as an example to create them using like a drag and drop interface. So no one's going to ever expect you to do that. But when you look at the structure of an SVG, they all have the same structure, especially the bootstrap icons. So I'm just going to split this out into a couple of parts. Now, as you can see, I've split this into kind of 3 parts, which I class as a kind of hamburger. So the first part here is where we define things like the namespace, the format of the SVG, things like viewbox and all of that. And I'm not going to bore you with the details. And as you can see, we have the color in here as well. The second part is where all of the content goes. So this is where all of our shapes are contained. So anything that you can actually see is within here. This is just to define the format. And then we just have the closing SVG element. Now, to show you how this works in practice, let's just say we want to change the color of this balloon to red as an example. I can just go to the fill property that we have in here and just type in red. And just like that, within seconds, again, we've changed that to red. It's really just as simple as that. Now, let's just say I want to make this slightly smaller. I'll just make this 13 as an example. Not make this 13. Actually, because of the axes in here, I'll just keep it as that. And it's really just as simple as that. And that's probably all you'll need to use your SVGs for. Now, there's multiple things that you can do with SVGs like animation. And just to show you one of the components that I released today on LinkedIn as well, let me just quickly go into here and we'll go to screen one. This is just a very basic components that I built using pure SVG. So there's no JavaScript, there's no CSS in here. It's just pure SVG. That's like an animation basically, and it's just taking us to the screen. And if I was to just show you quickly the code behind that, if we just quickly go into here, you can see that the format is exactly the same. So we still have the namespace here, all of our content all the way here, and then we have the closing element. Obviously, there's a lot more things happening in here, which is just like animation and stuff. And yeah, again, no one's going to expect you to know that from scratch, but just to kind of show you what's possible in terms of SVGs themselves. So now we have that going, I guess, let's try and build something using SVGs. So if I was just quickly going to here, what we're going to do is we're going to build a very simple navigation menu using SVGs. And again, it might seem a bit heavy, and I'm mindful that we've got 20 minutes left. But I will quickly show you how you can build. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's start and build, let's say, a button with an SVG as an example, just to show you. So let's just quickly open a new screen and go into here and go to new screen. We'll give it a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to just add a simple button. I'm just going to say insert, and then we'll just call button and go into here. There we go. And then we'll just say add to favorites as an example. Okay, we'll make this bigger and bigger around the edges, slightly bigger here. We'll make the text slightly smaller, so I'll probably make this 18. Okay, and we'll change the font to Lato Light as an example. And now we'll get our SVG. Actually, we'll change the color as well. Let's just find some random blue as an example, maybe. That's an ugly blue. Okay, let's just make it this kind of blue. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go back to my icons in here, and we're going to go to icons. And when that loads again, there we go. I'll just type in heart again, heart. And we will just find a plain heart icon. There we go. We'll use this outlined one. So the process is exactly the same. I'm going to copy this and we'll go to replace the text, and I'll just pop that into here. And our our content is right in here. Go back to Power Apps. And first of all, we have to add the image control. So I'll go into here, image, and I'll give it a second. Perfect. And now we will type that really long formula again, data image SVG plus XML UTF-8, and then we'll pop that onto here, encode URL, double. And then again, like I said before, our SVG code goes right in here. And just like that, we have this icon right in here. So now the next thing, we'll just make this slightly smaller. So as you can see, the SVG is fully responsive as well. It's perfectly working. It's changing the size as I'm kind of dragging and dropping. And what we're going to do now is I will just align the text here slightly to the left-hand side. So I'll just add a bit more padding. We'll just say 15 as an example, maybe 25. Maybe even 35. Let's just move this slightly further. Maybe 50. Okay, let's just settle for 50. Okay, and I will add that in here. And then the last thing that we'll need to do is we'll just need to change the color of that. So I'll go to here and go to white. And just like that, we have a relatively simple button. Actually, we could probably make the font size slightly bigger to 20. And as you can see, just like that, we have a really simple button in here. Now, again, we can take it a step further. So we can copy this and go to Control and C, go to our tree view, go to components, add a new component. I'll paste that into here. Okay, and let's just say we'll add another custom property in here. We'll just say SVG color as an example, text. And what we will do is I'll just say this is white. Okay, go to my SVG again, and similarly to how we have to do and work with the HTML control, I will go back into here, go into here, and then similarly to, like I said, we do with HTML control, I will do encode URL, we'll do the ampersand and the double quotes, and then we will say component 3, and then we just link in back to that SVG color. Okay, so now if I was just quickly go back to my, actually we'll just do the same with the button as well. So I'll click add components, and for the button itself, we can just use colors instead. So I'll just say data type, and that will be color, and this will be button fill, go to create, and then I will wait a second, there we go. And then go to my fill here somewhere, there we go. Okay, and then I will change this to be component 3 dot button fill, perfect. Okay, add that into here. Okay, so now what we've effectively done is, if I was just quickly go to insert, and then we'll go to custom, and then go to component 3. Just like that, we now have a fully custom, well, fully, when I say fully, basic customizable button. So I can effectively change the color of this to be, let's say, black. And I can change the color of this to be, let's say, light gray. And then we forgot to add the text color property as well, but I'll just quickly manually change that in here. And just like that, we just have a fully customizable button again that you can add to your applications literally in seconds and let your other colleagues in a team work with, as an example. And we could easily add a HTML control at the back. So I can easily go back into here, and we will go to insert HTML, and go into here again, HTML control, and I will give it a second. There we go. And then I will just quickly type in that div element again. So I'll just say div style, and then we'll say whatever that size was. So this is let's just make this 400 as an example. And then let's just make the height of 100. That will be easy to type in there. Go to my HTML control. There we go. And then add another quote, and then div, close that off. Whoops, can't type div today. Perfect. And then we'll just say width is 400 pixels, height is 100 pixels, and then box shadow is what we want, box shadow. And we will just say the box shadow is going to be, I'm just going to go into here again, and we'll just copy one of these as an example. And I will pop that into here. Let me just take this out. Perfect. And then actually this is the wrong box shadow. That's not a nice one that I want to use. Let's just go for this one as an example. Okay, let me take this out again, Control and V. Okay, and now the last thing that we'll do is we'll just move this off the edge. So I'll just add some margin again to all of the edges. I'll just say margin 50 pixels as an example. And then we just need to make sure this is properly aligned to the button. And again, you probably can't see that very well. And what I am actually going to do is I'm going to go back to my button again, button fill, and I will pop that into here. Go to HTML control, and actually what I will do in here is I'll pop that into there, and I'll just say 0.3, 0.5, 0.6 maybe. Okay, and then pop that, change the color of the text to white. Oh, wrong button. There we go. Color of that to white. And just like that, we have that component. So I can say this is going to be button fill. Let's just go back to the color that we had before. Just like that, we have a fully customizable component that you can now reuse across the application. So you can obviously again, copy, export that and import that, add that to your components library, and you don't necessarily have to do that from scratch yourself. And it really just doesn't take long. As you can see, I'm talking while I'm building, and it took like a couple of minutes to build. So it's really as simple as that. So now if we were to just quickly build a very simple navigation menu component, now we probably will run out of time to do the full thing that I have in one of these screens in here, but we will give it a quick start. So let's just go into our component, and let's add a brand new component. And we will first of all add the button. So I just want a plain button that will be for decorative purposes. And then we will probably make this around 500 pixels wide. Okay, I'll just move that to the center. I'll just eyeball it, and we'll make it 200 tall. Okay, maybe let's just make this 520 as an example. And I'll just eyeball it again. We'll do that. Now, the next thing we'll do is we'll probably change the border radius to be perhaps 50. Okay, and then we will also remove the text that we have in here. So we want this to be for decorative purposes. So I'm just going to change the display mode to view, and then we'll change the fill of that to black. There we go. And then the next thing that we want to add is the actual menu items and a gallery. So I'm going to add a gallery first. So I'll just say horizontal, and we'll make this a blank gallery. We will pop that into here. And the next thing that we want to do is obviously want to create some kind of table of records that we can then link to our navigation menu. Now, to do this, we will quickly add a property to the component. So I'll go into here, go to components, go to new custom property, and I'll just call this menu items. And then that will be a table. There we go. Okay, so now we will add the records into here. Now, what we will do is I will probably, just to save us a little bit of time, I will reuse the menu that the actual menu items that we already have in here, just to save us a little bit of time. Now, I'll go over how that's actually structured in a second as well. So I'll just do Control and C, go back into here, go to menu items, and then Control and V. Now, if I would just quickly expand this, and I was to just quickly, let's just say, make a little bit of room between the edges here, all we have in this navigation menu, as you can see, is we just have the icons that we are passing as SVG. So we have the contents that we have between the formula and the brackets that goes within the kind of parentheses, and we're just passing that in here. And we probably could do with another item within this record, which will be navigate, and this will navigate us to the screen I want to navigate to. So let's just say we'll call this app active screen for now, app active screen, and this is what we will navigate to using the specific ones. We will change that as we go over to the actual application. Okay, so now we have the SVGs. Again, these are all of the icons that I have already there. The next thing that we need to do is we need to add an image control. So I'm just going to go to Insert, go to Image, and we'll drag that onto our gallery. And what we're going to do now is we have a couple of things to do. So first of all, we need to pass our formula that we had. So again, that really long and ugly formula, which is data image SVG plus XML UTF-8, and then it's encode URL, double quotes in here. And then what we will do in here is we will pass the content of the actual image as this item.image. So I'm going to say, actually, before we do that, I don't think we have assigned the gallery items just yet to that. No. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go back into here to component 4 and then menu items, which is the property we've just created. And then for our image, I will now be able to do, again, double quotes and ampersand sign, and then this item dot icon, and then close that off, double quotes, and as you can see, we have that in here now. I'm just going to make this smaller. Now there is already some default edit formatting that we've copied across from the other one, but we'll change that in a second. So I'm just going to make this kind of smaller, maybe a little bit bigger. Okay, and then I will make the gallery fit to the edges here. Again, I'm eyeballing this for now, but obviously if we wanted that to be perfect, we'd do it slightly differently and more kind of responsive. And I'll just, again, eyeball that into here. And then the next couple of things that we just need to do is we can add a button into here as well. So we can just say button, pop that into here. Okay, and I will just make this, again, I'll just eyeball this. We will make this round, so we'll just make this 90 as an example, and just make sure that we have, just make it 100 by 100, so we have a proper circle. Okay, and what we're going to do is we can just say, for the purpose of this one, we will just say white, and then we'll just change the visible property in here, wherever that's gone. There we go. And we'll just say, if this item is selected, there we go, we will make it true, and then otherwise it will be false. So then when we go to click on these, as you can see, we have to change a couple of things. We will now be able to see that as well. Now I'll move the icons to the top. So we will have the icon right at the very top, bring to front. And now we have a fully functioning menu to some extent, not properly just yet. So the next thing that we'll do is I will just quickly edit the button that we have in here. So for the hoverfill, actually I'll remove the text as well. For hoverfill, we will just make this, let's say RGBA again, 96, 96, 96, and then some opacity. So I'll just do 0.3. Okay, and now we should have a Okay. Oh, that's because the background is black. I will probably make this, let me just think what we could make this. Let's just make this 0.9 maybe. That's a little bit dark. Let's just make this lighter. Lighter. Okay. Okay. Actually, it's because we've done this the wrong way as well. I'll probably take that out of the visible, and we will do for the fill property instead. So I'll just go into button and then fill, wherever that's gone. Okay. And we'll just say if I'll just paste that in here. If this item is selected, we want this to be white, otherwise white color. Let's just go for antique white. Otherwise, we want this to be black as an example. Color black. So now what this will effectively mean, and I'll just make this visible, is, oh, I hate antique white. Just make this pure white. White. There we go. And this, what that now means is that as I'm hovering over, again, because these icons are white, you can't really see them right now. But this means that as I'm hovering over them, you can now see that we have a button there. So the last kind of couple of finishing touches that we can do before we wrap up, because we only have a couple of minutes left, I will go back to my component again and go to the table in here. And as you can see, similarly to how we did with the previous ones, we are referencing an app active screen in here to change the color of the actual specific icon in here. So for this one, we'll just say this will be black, and then this will be, let's say, white if not. And I will do the same thing for each one of the SVGs that we have in here. So do Control and C, go into here, Control and V, okay, and they will disappear temporarily. And don't worry, you'll see in a second why. There we go, black, white, okay, and then this one as well. Okay, perfect. Right, and now what this effectively means is if I was just go into here and let's just add a brand new screen. And if I was just add the component, so we'll go for component 4. Okay, by default, obviously, because none of the active screens match the actual screen that we have on here, which is why all of these are black. I'm just going to set the, this is screen 5. We'll just say if the current app's screen name equals screen 5, which is the screen we are on right now, screen 5.name, you can see that appears now. If the other app's active screen, let's just say properties after name as an example. Okay, we'll do this for properties as an example before dot name. There we go. And then for the last one, we will do properties, whatever property details after name. Okay. Rightio. And as you can see, we now have a kind of fully functioning menu. We just have one more thing to do. What I'm going to do is, because I want to show you how this actually works when you click on these, because right now we don't have any kind of, nothing is happening when we go. But if I was just quickly show you, Control and C, and paste this to one of the screens that we have in here. Let's go for properties after as an example, and I'll pop that into here. We should hopefully have the icon. Let me just go Control and V. The icon, right icon selected. I don't think we have the right icon in here, and that's because we have made this as if this is selected. That's why it's not showing properly. But again, I'm rushing through this because I'm mindful of the time. Here, if we just quickly go into here again, and if we just say, go into here, and for the fill, if this, and we'll do the same with the app active screen, app active screen, app active screen dot name equals, for the time being, we'll make it app active screen dot name. We want this to be white, otherwise we want this to be black. And oops, let me just type that in. White, color, white, color, black. Okay, and this will make it visible for all of them. What we will do now is I'm going to quickly go to my menu items in here, and I will just add the navigator to each one of them. So I think I've already done that, haven't I? Yes. Okay, so what I will do, the last kind of finishing touches in the on select property, if we just quickly go into, whoops, go into here, we'll do on select. We want to navigate to this item and then navigate, and then we'll just add a transition effect of fade, go to here. Okay, so now we have that. We are nearly done in here, the last thing that we need to change is we just need to change the menu items. So we have to reflect the name from here into the navigation here. Okay, screen 5. Oops, navigate screen 5. Okay, then for this one, it will be properties after. Properties after. Okay, for this one, it will be properties, and then it will be navigate to properties before. And for this one, properties after, we'll pop that onto here. Okay, I think now the icons for some reason are still black. App active screen name. App active screen. Oh, that's exactly why. Because these icons are not changed just yet. So what we will do just quickly. Lastly, I am not sure why that's not appearing properly in here. If app active screen name to the current app active screen equals property details after name, we should make it black white. Okay, so we have an issue with the button itself instead. If we just quickly go into here, button fill. If app active screen equals, and that's why. Okay, this item navigate.name. Now that should work properly. Okay, perfect. So now is the moment of truth. Hopefully this should work properly. So I'm just going to copy this and I'll paste it to one of the screens that we have already on here. Let me just see what screens we use. We use screen 5. Okay, so hopefully if I click on the first one here, and now is the moment of truth, obviously if I'm lying or not, this should take us to the right screen. So it should take us to screen 5, and also it should highlight the this icon here, which we assigned to screen 5. So moment of truth. Ta-da! But this, oh, that's why this menu is still not the updated menu. That's why it's not done it properly. So I'm just going to pop that into here, go into screen 5, pop that into here, and then we'll just pop this menu onto a couple of the other screens that we have. So we'll go to, what else did we use? Properties after, properties before dot name. So we'll go into properties before, what's it with the one here? Properties, this one. Okay, and now if I just quickly pop that randomly on the screen. Okay, now if I just quickly go to this one. Okay, and I think we had one of these. Okay, that's not the right screen that we navigated to. Property details, let me just go into here. It was the last one, wasn't it? So we so far have assigned that to this one, and this one. And as you can see, that's working. There's still some cosmetic changes that we need to make, but now we have a fully functioning menu that we can just reuse in our future applications. So you don't have to rebuild that every single time from scratch. Again, I've run out of time for kind of a lot more things that I wanted to add, but are there any questions at all? I know that this session was probably a little bit more overwhelming than the previous one because there's a lot more kind of details and stuff. And I promise you that as you kind of watch this back and as you practice, it will become a lot easier to do. But any feedback or any comments, any questions at all? Thank you so much for the reactions. I really appreciate it. Any thoughts? Do you think it's easy enough to do? You can lie, don't worry, or you can be honest.
Now, I think it's awesome how you stitch together different technologies to achieve this result. I think consensus on the call is that the out of the box components really suck, and that goes across the board.
You're
The
not going to be an
platform,
MVP anymore after saying that, Victor.
yeah, I'll edit that out of the. Now I say this on PGIs as well, so I'm not afraid of being honest. Um, I wish though that more of the fluent UI would be
Yeah,
native here instead of
absolutely.
the ugly stuff that we get from the get go. But I think
Absolutely.
this works to our advantage as well. I mean, that's where we have
Yeah.
space to shine.
Yeah,
Of course, you
absolutely.
have done great, Kristine. I mean, anybody that I talk to, they say, yeah, look at her videos. My apps used to be ugly
Thank you so
before
much.
I saw Kristine's video. So this is great stuff. I mean, there
Thank
is
you
a
so
lot
much.
there, but I
Yeah,
think it all makes sense.
perfect. Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you. Right, so now homework time, Jess. It's your time to shine as long as you're ready to show off your homework.
Yeah.
Let's see what you did. Thank you so much. I can see some really nice comments in there. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Silva, for the kind comments. I really appreciate that. Buttons can be really pretty, it takes a minute. It doesn't take that long. Thank you so much, Victor, as well, for that comment. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mala. Thank you, Roxanne. That's perfectly fine. Honestly, it takes time kind of absorbing all of that information anyway. Thank you so much again, Mala. Thank you, Esteban, as well. And thank you so much, Leo. I really appreciate that. No, thank you so much, guys. Honestly, that's really kind of you, and I really, really appreciate it. So, homework time. Now, the exciting time. Jess, should I give the stage to you so you can show us what you did?
Sure, I don't know about exciting, but yeah,
No,
I'll
it
give it
is
a go.
exciting.
So obviously with contracts that I've got on going at the moment and
Yeah,
a 9-month-old, I tried to squeeze in as much as I could.
of
Um,
course.
Generally what I tend to try and do is plan something out on like
Yeah.
Figma, almost like a
Okay.
mood board,
Amazing.
before I do anything. So I will try and share my screen with you now.
Brilliant. Let's have a look.
2 seconds. Okay, if you can let me know if you can see it.
Yes, it's just loaded.
Yep,
Perfect.
lovely. So yeah, this is usually
Amazing.
what I tend to do beforehand. So I create sort of like little mini draft
Yeah, I love
canvases
that. Yes.
um and whatever I'm sort of thinking at the time, I sort of spew it onto here and see what sticks really, and
Amazing.
um yeah, go from there really. I find
Yeah.
Figma really good to use because I work with other people. They can sort of have a look around
Yeah,
and see
of
what I've come
course.
up with,
Yeah.
and they can react to it as well, which is super.
Amazing. No, that looks amazing. And I use Figma every single day and Illustrator. So no, this is awesome. I really, really love that, Jess. Thank you so much for sharing
Oh, good.
that. Yes. At least your dog didn't eat your homework or your 9-month-old didn't eat your homework. Yeah.
I mean, she would have if I let her, I'm sure.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. So just mindful of the
Thank
time
you.
before we navigate off. We have one more homework. And obviously for those that weren't here on Tuesday, I'll show you how to get your homework quickly. So we'll go over to the screen again. I'll go to window and I'll share the homework again. Now, this thing is on my GitHub. So this application is my GitHub and I'll pop that in the chat again before I forget. So I'll just go into here, go into the chat. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, that's perfectly fine. And there you go. Perfect. And the homework itself, so after the first session, we had 2 homeworks. So one was to make this gallery beautiful. As you can see, Jess did an amazing job there. And the second one was to change the way the product details are laid out, so similarly to what we did in the first session. Now, your next exercise is slightly more tricky, and I want you to try and not cheat. Try and not copy and paste anything. Try and work it out and see how far you get. And all you have to do in this exercise, it's actually really simple. It's just to create a nice button. Now, you don't have to make it look exactly like that, but just try and create a nice button. Bonus points if you use an SVG icon as well, and share that with me. So if you want to send that to me as a DM or tag me in a LinkedIn post, a Twitter post, I would absolutely love to see what you do. So it's a challenge for you. Take it as far as you want, and I would love to see your results.
Yeah, that's awesome. And to make up for my previous comment on not showing up on class without homework, just the first person that does it and wants to publicize will send you a book. So either we'll
Yeah,
deliver in person. I think I'm making to the UK in May, or we'll send it over to you. We'll mail it over to you. All
amazing.
right. So whomever does it
Nice.
first will get it. And if you happen to be in the UK, it'll be handed to you in person. Otherwise, elsewhere in the globe, we will mail it to you.
By no one else but the legend Victor Dantas himself. Now, you know, the award is there, so you have the homework. Should we say, what's the deadline then, Victor? Should we say a week's time? Is that enough time?
Tonight. Just kidding.
To-
Yeah, let's give it a week and
Amazing.
see where we land.
Yes, amazing. Very exciting. So the competition is on. Good luck to everyone. And if you have any questions, obviously just drop me a DM and then we'll collate them together, have a look. And yeah, good luck to everyone with the challenge. But again, thank you so much, Victor, for having me on the show. It's been an
Thank you.
absolute pleasure. And I really hope you guys have enjoyed that as well and learned something new through the 2 sessions.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks everyone. Have a great weekend.
Brilliant.
Thank you,
Do
Kristine.
your homework
Thank you,
this
Victor.
time, okay?
That's all right. Thank you,
Yeah.
Christian.
No, thank you
Bye.
so much. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank
Bye
you.
now. See you
Bye-bye.
later.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.